This lesson is about ethics, ways to think about ethics. Ethics is often simple, doing what is right, but increasingly complicated. How do we know what is right, especially when we have to make a decision that will cause problems either way? Science, data science, machine learning are ways to increase understanding those problems, can help make those decisions, such as do we restrain someone and put them in a locked hospital unit against their will to stop them from killing themselves? As David Jobs noted earlier, hospitalization for suicidality can be harmful. Prevention science using machine learning to enable us to better understand, estimate risk with multiple variables and longitudinal trends over time, can guide decisions earlier. Prevention is generally ethical. 5 areas or branches of philosophy going back centuries and millennia are metaphysics, epistemology, aesthetics, politics, and ethics. How humans reason about these issues, about reality, is really what philosophy is trying to support. Another word for metaphysics is reality. What is reality? Epistemology is how do we understand reality? How do we talk about it? Rhetoric. Aesthetics, perceptions and judgments of beauty, other emotional sensing experiences and how we describe them, how we develop and use words for that purpose, encode individual values, established shared values, for example, art and our experience of art. An important area is how our brains work. Luc Ciampi, Ciompi, first name Luc, is a Swiss psychiatrist that worked a lot on how our brains combine thoughts and feelings and how our brains work, how we decide if the thought is on track or not, correct or not. Is a thought a solution? Does it feel right? Politics, how we work together, collective behavior, and aesthetics and ethics. Again, do the right thing, relates to morality and values. Today, in education and healthcare, and with efforts to address harmful history, human history that has self-perpetuating mechanisms, structural racism, other problems, there are many important ethics issues and terms. These include addressing power inequalities, protecting privacy, maintaining and improving cybersecurity, transparency, making decisions shared and clear to everybody, sharing data, sharing information, sharing knowledge. Without data, machine learning and artificial intelligence can't do very much. Informed consent. Do people understand what they are agreeing to? Changing consent, changing your mind to participate in some activity or project or program or research study. Establishing contractual agreements about data, information, privacy. 2 important acronyms in ethics are HIPAA, HIPAA, you can look it up, and which applies to protecting privacy and security in healthcare data, and FERPA, FERPA, which is similar and applying to student data in school systems. Participatory decision-making. In making decisions that have trade-offs will cause problems either way, but one way will have more benefits. Communities and people who will be affected by those decisions should participate. It seems an ethical approach. A good example of this is balancing individual rights with community harms and benefits. For example, perfection is hard and often not yet possible, such as with vaccines that have rare side effects, such as measles vaccine, which has serious adverse events on the order of 3 per 100,000 vaccinations and 1 death per 1 million vaccinations. Clearly, giving measles vaccines to the population, to millions of people, is going to cause some problems. It's going to actually result in some people dying. But by preventing measles infection, the benefits are far greater. Measles infection, which is not something we see very often because of vaccinations, but without the vaccination, measles infections cause death in 1 to 3 per 1,000 people. So the death rate from measles infection is about 1,000 times higher than the death from measles vaccines. What do we do? Should we compensate without any difficult lawsuits? Should people that are harmed by measles vaccines, other vaccines, should they be compensated for decisions about giving the vaccine, because those are going to benefit many more people? It's a challenging ethical issue. From a public health perspective, it seems clearly ethical to give the vaccine. But when we give the vaccine, people don't see the prevented measles infections. People only see the harms from the vaccines. An important concept to think about in ethical reasoning is counterfactual reasoning. What would have happened? Another way to look at history. When vaccines work, or when we make an ethical decision, we don't see what we prevented. Scientific imagination, data science, and machine learning are ways to actually see what would have happened, to carry out counterfactual reasoning. Some other terms that are important in ethics are accountability. This relates to transparency. People making decisions should be accountable to both the benefits and the harms. Principles versus rules. Ethics and law are interconnected, but law can become rigid, and decisions made on the letter of the law rather than the purpose underlying the law, which is ethics. With principles, people can make their own judgments, and in doing so, there'll be mistakes. But if the principles behind the judgment, the ethical reasoning, is honest and transparent, then should someone be punished for the unfortunate consequences of judging something? Complicated. Balancing scientific knowledge and practice. How much evidence do we need to make a decision? Another ethical area is sharing risk. When doctors make decisions to do a surgery or not, to give a medication or not, there's going to be risk. Again, is an ethical balance. Another important aspect in ethics, and particularly with politics, is intent. What is the purpose of someone making a statement or taking an action? Semantics, the meaning of words, another important aspect of ethics, particularly because words are how we think about ethical issues, and words affect our emotions, which affect our brain function. An example of semantics in politics is changing the word or the term estate tax to calling it death tax. It's the same tax, but it changes how people perceive the tax and feel about it. Psychometrics, which we've talked about in earlier lessons, is an important scientific approach to being able to perceive things. Otherwise, we wouldn't necessarily be able to see. And based upon being able to see things underneath the waterline in the iceberg picture, we can hopefully make more ethical decisions that are more ethical because there's more benefit than harm. Again, think about false positives, false negatives, accuracy. Those are all very important in ethics. The more terms to think about with ethics are uncertainty, ambiguity, ambivalence, contradiction. These are each semantic elements in development of better understanding of complex reality and for making decisions. Ethics is evolving, and it is a complex area of human reasoning. Some questions are, how can machine learning be applied? How does ethics relate to suicidality? In suicide prevention, a moralist view is life must be protected, each suicide must be stopped. From a libertarian view, there's no obligation to intervene to prevent a suicide. Individuals do whatever they decide, regardless of what others think. A relativist view, the obligation to intervene depends on the situation, the culture, the consequences for the person, society. Is someone who's suffering from a terminal disease, very painful cancer, do they have the right to kill themselves? Again, complicated and lots of argument. We can use machine learning to better understand and hopefully prevent problems from getting more serious, which I think is a very important aspect of ethics. Again, prevention. One last question. Do we need AI-informed government to handle increasing complexity? Thank you.